I really like aliens and conspiracy theories, and I also really like movies, so when they come together, I'm totally in my element. One such film about aliens is Signs. Signs is a film that I absolutely adore, but has never been well liked by the public. I'll come to more of why that is later on, but first, let's have a look at the film itself. The film's opening credits introduce us to the main soundtrack, which was designed to mimic the sharp and screechy shout scene from Psycho. I actually really like it. It's subtly creepy and foreboding, setting the tone for the film. The film starts with Mel Gibson waking up to the sound of a child screaming. Mel Gibson was once a reverend, but he got pissed off with God because his wife was killed in a car accident, his son has asthma, and his daughter can never finish a glass of water. He runs out into his crop field and finds his kids acting weird, and then notices there's a big crop circle in his field. Naturally, he phones the police thinking it was just some kids fooling around. Also, the dog wets himself, so Mel Gibson says he'll phone the doctor and not the vet. Why doesn't he call the vet? Well, we'll come to that later. The officer turns up, and after giving an unnecessarily disgusting story about an old lady spitting phlegm on skateboards, she says, "Nah, this was definitely aliens, mate." Mel Gibson then stops because he can't hear his kids, so they rush back and find his kids being weird again. Supposedly the dog was being aggressive, so the kid tried barbecuing him. Later on that night, Mel Gibson is woken up by his kids being weird yet again. He helps his daughter back to bed and gets settled until we see an alien outside. Mel Gibson, thinking it's still those damn kids fooling around, starts running around and screaming with his brother to scare them, but they don't succeed and the alien jumps off the roof and into the field. So they phone the police again. The officer comes back and plays a skeptic. Mel Gibson's daughter acts weird and leaves half-empty glasses of water lying around because she's particularly fussy and often says the water is contaminated, but more on that later. They all then get distracted because every news channel is reporting an outbreak in UFO and crop circle sightings, but Mel Gibson's like, no thanks, and turns TV and radio off for a bit. Also, there's actually a really cool shot here of some man-made structures, man-made crop circles, if you will. So the family head into town where everyone acts weird and hysterical, which I suppose they would given the circumstances, especially this guy. I don't know what it is about this scene, but I've always found it fascinating. I mean, just watch him.
Called probing. It's a military procedure. You send out a reconnaissance group, very small, check things out. Not to engage, but to evaluate the situation, evaluate the level of danger, make sure things are all clear.
Clear for what?
For the rest of them.
Yeah. Anyway, it's also a technique to make everyone seem strange and alien compared to the family, getting us used to the idea of isolation and aliens. There's some more references to Bo saying the water is contaminated, and then we're introduced to the director making a small appearance in the film. There's some animosity towards him, but we're not sure why just yet. Back at the house, the baby monitor Morgan's using as a walkie-talkie picks up a signal from the aliens. Notice how the car has the license plates removed? Along with the shape of the car, I feel like it's a clever piece of deliberate imagery to make it look like a classic UFO. Or maybe I'm just looking into that too much. Later on that night, Mel Gibson wanders out into the crop field in pitch black because the dog is barking at it aggressively. I'm not sure how he manages to walk through there with such massive balls, but there we go. He gives a demotivating speech to his crops about how they're never going to get famous.
You're wasting your time here. You're not going to get famous.
And then he bumps into the cameraman and drops a torch, breaking it. He gives it the classic old smack to it to get it working, just in time to see someone who skips leg day walking through his field. After shitting himself, he runs back home and decides to watch TV again, where they realise the problem is a lot bigger than they first imagined. After watching the news all night, Mel Gibson then inspires his brother to have some faith and to believe in that things happen for a reason, before he totally shuts him down and says God doesn't exist and religion is bullshit. He then tells him about his dead wife's last words were to tell him to swing away. Yeah, totally not awkward there, mate. The next day, Mel Gibson has a shower. There's some more crop circle visuals here. He sees his kids in tinfoil hats, like tinfoil hat conspiracy theorists. They read a book about aliens and get scared by a telephone. Turns out it was the director phoning him, so Mel Gibson goes to his house, and it's here where we learn that this guy killed Mel Gibson's wife on accident. One night she was walking alone in the dark down a quiet country road, and he fell asleep at the wheel before ploughing into her. So not only did she mention his brother in her last words, but she also goes on walks down dark, quiet roads. Okay. Remember earlier in the film where Mel Gibson wouldn't phone the vet? Well, this guy is the town vet, and I guess he didn't want an awkward, you killed my wife, so I expect some free healthcare from now on kind of situation. He also gives us a theory about aliens not liking water because crop circles are always in dry places. Seems like a stretch, mate, but okay. Yeah, here's where we're introduced to the film's biggest criticism, but we'll discuss that later on. He also tells Mel Gibson he locked one of them in his pantry and not to go in there. So what does he do? Goes in there. He cuts the fingers off an alien's hand and then fucks off home. There's an issue people have here too. There's a lot of talk about them struggling to open doors, like how can super advanced aliens not open doors? And to be honest, I see where they're going with this. Like, imagine being so far advanced that you never use doors anymore. If they were all automatic and you grew up in a world without door handles, I can see why there'd be a small issue. Kind of like how most kids today wouldn't know how to use a cassette player. But yeah, the door is locked, so, give the guy a break. So he comes home and finds Joaquin Phoenix has been converted to a tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist, after watching some footage of an alien picking on some kids at a birthday party. Yeah, what a big man. Up until now, visuals of aliens have been limited, a technique we all know from Jaws. It builds up fear and tension. I remember seeing this in the cinema when I was about 12, and it scared the absolute shit out of me. It's not so scary now, of course, but it's easy to see why this created such a shock back then. See, now this is how you do a jump scare. You don't just have an alarming scene out of nowhere for no reason. This is built up. You know it's going to happen, but it scares you anyway. Joaquin Phoenix also sells this scene really well. His acting is solid throughout the whole film anyway, but especially here. And when heroes in the film are scared, it makes it all the more terrifying. Anyway, the aliens finally decide to stop titting about and invade. They choose to attack Mel Gibson's family. Not really sure why they'd bother with the family of four, but we'll go along with it. They try and have their last supper, but they're interrupted, so they start to prepare. Mel Gibson displays a couple of really good reaction shots here. We don't see what he's looking at, but his facial expressions depict the fear for us, arguably making it all the more terrifying. The poor dog is left outside and dies. Yeah, and you thought Jon Snow was bad. Morgan then suffers an asthma attack, and the aliens fail to get the family, so they fuck off and decide they've got better things to do. The next morning, they all wake up and go upstairs, thinking everything's okay, but turns out there's an alien that's been left behind, and it's the alien Mel Gibson cut the fingers off, who's apparently after a bit of revenge. Now, this is where the CGI kinda lets the film down a bit, but I mean, it was 2002, so you have to give it a bit of slack. Besides, it's just as good, if not better, than some of the CGI you see in Hollywood films today. Now, in the middle of the confrontation, Mel Gibson takes a break from the whole thing to have a flashback of his wife dying and telling Joaquin Phoenix to swing away. But he realises it wasn't random, but that her last words were fate. The alien poisons Morgan like Spider-Man, so Mel Gibson tells Joaquin Phoenix to swing away, and he gives the alien an almighty arse whooping, discovering that it has a corrosive reaction to the water in the process. And what do they have in abundance around the house? Yep, water, thanks to his daughter's weird little habit. So yeah, the alien is defeated, Morgan survives the poison because of his asthma, Mel Gibson's faith is restored, believing all his family's shortcomings would help them in the long run, and that everything happened for a reason. Everyone lives happily ever after, and that's it. I do really like Signs. It's a film about aliens, but it focuses less on the chaos and destruction they cause, and instead focuses on a small family and how they deal with it in an enclosed environment. It's also about a crisis of faith and how things that happen to us in life, even if they're small annoyances, can sometimes be for a reason. I feel like the story overall ran really smoothly, nothing ever seemed rushed, it all had a natural flow to it. The slow build-up of the aliens was tense, and it grew more and more terrifying as the film went on, and the soundtrack really helped capture that. The characters were real and relatable, and the actors playing them were fantastic, not to mention the small cast size and small town environment really helping to capitulate the enclosed environment and feeling of being on your own. We never see much of the outside world and how it's affected, but this is designed to remind us of the importance of ourselves and our family. Besides, we've seen how cities get affected in alien invasions time and time again, so it's nice to see something different. The use of imagery is really clever throughout the film as well, though I do feel M. Night Shyamalan tries a bit too hard to give film students wet dreams rather than just sticking to the basics. Now, let's address the elephants in the room. The film receives a lot of criticism for its plot holes, the two main being how they couldn't open doors and being allergic to water. I've already spoken about the doors, and besides, it's evident as the film goes on that they eventually grasp the concept, so let's not dwell on that too much. Now, the water, I actually have a lot to say about, so here we go. The main issue people have is, why would they invade a planet that's made up mostly of water and abduct creatures made up mostly of water? And yes, it does seem stupid, but I guess you just have to think deeply about the aliens. Perhaps this is a measure of last resort. They might not have any other choice, and then it's a matter of life and death for some reason. But then again, wouldn't an advanced race of aliens wear some kind of protective suit or something? Because there's water vapour even in the air, right? Well, maybe it's just water in its concentrated form. But then if it rained, they'd really be in trouble, and it's most likely raining somewhere in the world during the invasions, so yeah. It is pretty difficult to defend, so maybe you have to look at it from a symbolic point of view. If you take a lot of the film's religious symbolism and undertones, like it bearing similarities to the story of Job from the Bible, you could view the aliens rather as demons and a representation of the devil taking away Mel Gibson's faith. As he lost his belief in God, he started to attract the devil, aka the aliens. The more he loses his faith, the more he attracts the devil and the dark side. The water in this case acts as holy water, having a corrosive reaction with evil. Now, if that's a little too abstract for you, you could view the problem of there being something in the water, a chemical like chlorine or fluoride, for example. Our tap water is full of all kinds of things, so it could very well be something in it that harms the aliens. I mean, I can be particularly fussy with my water. If it smells too chemically, I'd rather not drink it, and a lot of people must share that opinion because we sell bottled spring water to people every day. So yeah, it's not too wild to accept Bo's problem with drinking water and saying it's contaminated, but it's a bit hit and miss with the aliens. Okay, so that's all I really have to say about Signs. I do really like it, even with its mistakes. It's the kind of film I can just watch over and over again without ever getting bored, and I think it's a film that people grow to accept as the years go on, and it may even end up being a classic one day. So I really hope you enjoyed this video and may even give the film another chance. So yeah, thanks for watching and goodbye.